Making his way to the stage. Time waits for no man. Wayne Brown. There he is. Kia ora, good evening. Welcome to Stuff's debate for the Auckland Mayoralty. My name is Simon Plum. I'm the Auckland editor of Stuff, and we're very pleased to have you here tonight. Over the next 45 minutes, we're going to be testing the credentials of these four leading candidates, all of whom think they are the best person to take Tamaki Makaurau forward. So who are they? From left, Viv Beck, Wayne Brown, Efeso Collins, and Craig Lord. Tonight's debate is being streamed live on the Stuff website. So in light of some rather colourful language in a recent debate, I would like to ask you all to keep it respectful and progressive, please. I'd also like to thank AUT for their generosity in providing tonight's venue. A number of staff are here, you're very welcome, and a particularly warm welcome to their Vice-Chancellor, Professor Damon Salisa. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce tonight's moderator. He's probably the most experienced local government reporter in the country, Mr. Todd Niall.
Good evening. It's good to be back in AUT. It was ATI when I studied journalism here. 6 months, $180, and here we are now. With, let's get cracking, 45 minutes with people who, one of whom, is likely to be leading Auckland into the future. You've all been on the campaign trail for quite a long time, so we should be able to get this part into 30 seconds each. A refined pitch on why you should be the next Mayor of Auckland, going in alphabetical and progressive order. Viv Beck.
Kia ora. I'm a constructive leader who works well with people to get things done. And the things I want to get done are finally addressing congestion and transport issues, reducing emissions, addressing the crime and antisocial behaviour that has become prolific, dealing with the housing and intensification issues, and ensuring we have an accountable transport Auckland Council and city CCOs. We're at a critical time in the development of our city, and I believe the leadership skills I bring will help us move forward and grow and prosper.
Wayne Brown, why you?
Kia ora tātou. We've got to fix Auckland. We've got to finish all the projects that are underway, clear the streets of construction and cones, and do it all within budget. I've got the track record to get these things done. 3 DHBs, 2 SOEs, 2 power companies and my own companies in Auckland and elsewhere. They've all done well, and it's that experience that I will bring to get value for ratepayers and to fix Auckland.
Efeso Collins.
Kia ora e te whānau, I'm Efeso Collins, and I'm standing because I want a just, sustainable society. I think of my girls, and I want them to know that this society is about them, that we're attacking the climate resilience challenges that we have in front of us. I bring experience to the table. I've been a councillor now for 6 years for Manukau, and that experience is going to be needed. And moreover, I'm a collaborative leader. I'm inclusive. I'm prepared to go out to listen to people, to be authentic, and to make the courageous, challenging decisions that our city needs. That's what Tamaki Makaurau is all about, and that's the city we want to lift our eyes and bring hope back into our city.
And 30 seconds of Craig Lord.
Good evening, everyone. Standing beside me in various formats are 3 career politicians. We've been conditioned to think that politicians can solve our problems. Politicians created our problems. I will be the change. I will be the mayor for everyone, and I will bring common sense principles to the job and make council serve you. Thank you.
Okay, we could leave it there, but there's a few more questions. What kind of leader would you be? And we'll start with Wayne Brown. So I guess unlike a KiwiSaver fund, let's go to past performance and see what sort of an indicator that might be of the future. Wayne, you've talked about your directorships and your chairmanship, but this is politics, and you've been a mayor before. You've been Far North District Council, 2 terms. It's an area similar population to the Rodney ward of Auckland Council. You know what I'm going to say probably. You were a mayor and a property developer at the same time, a move which proved a little bit fractious at times. In 2010 and 2011, you refused to pay some rates and charges on a development in Kerikeri. You and the council eventually called in the Auditor-General to sort it out, who found mostly in the council's favour and criticised you unwise in the way you pursued the dispute. 2015, after you were heavily defeated by John Carter, he carried out an internal inquiry called in the Serious Fraud Office. It found nothing that it should turn its attention to, but did say that they found evidence that both council members and employees apparently failed to comply with internal systems and controls. And finally, this was immediately after your mayoralty. 2014, you disputed charges for a Kaitaia development that you were doing, leading to a district court decision in 2018, which you lost, and the judge found you didn't really have a defence. I know you consider that to be history, but what kind of mayor has that sort of dispute with their own council?
Gosh, I think you've got quite a lot of that wrong, and it's a long time ago. I've been leading organisations all my working life. I have led 4 that do more than $1 billion a year and have more than 10,000 staff.
But this is about you as a politician.
And as a leader, those are all in the public eye. I've been in the public eye for 23 years.
This is about a politician.
You can't be the chair of Auckland Health Board without political influence, and you're appointed by politicians. I've been appointed by both John Key and Helen Clark.
But the point of bringing those things up is to ask, you have commercial property. When you're the Mayor of Auckland, can Aucklanders expect that same kind of thing to occur if there's a conflict between your business interests and you as Mayor?
Well, my business interests in Auckland, I've had them for a very long time, and there's been nothing like that cropped up. If you are successful, there is always lots of people who want to have a bit of a chip at you. And the best they could find was I used the wrong news letterhead in one. I've led organisations that have tackled some really tough jobs, and this one here is tough. And you have to do some reasonably hard things now and again, which annoy the odd person who's loses some sort of privilege. Which
so people shouldn't look at that as an indicator of what kind of mayor you would be in Auckland.
No, not at all. They should look at the hospital board and see what happened there. They should look at the debt that we've got now and see how I can deal with that. This is a big business in trouble, and it needs a grown-up, experienced leader.
Okay. Craig Lord, you're an outsider to this world. What do you think your biggest task will be if you were to be elected that day and Christmas?
The biggest task? That's quite an open question. There's so many different things I want to try and achieve. It's difficult to try and put them in. I suppose...
Well, no, let me put it to you, because it's not an open question. When you walk in that door, council officials will have next year's budget pulling together ready for you to decide by Christmas to put to councillors. You have to present to councillors next year's budget proposal. Are you ready for that?
Yeah, sure.
So, but what do you know about the process? What else would you like to know? What do you know about the process?
Well, so first of all, your question was broad, and then you've shrunk it down to talking about the budget. So is that what you want? You want me to tell you?
Well, if you think there's a bigger task you've got between then and Christmas.
I know you asked which one would it be, but now you want to talk budget. That's cool. We can do that. So you want to know if I'm capable of sitting there and working out numbers and talking to the council about it? I just want to clarify what you're asking. Yes, I am. And I'm smart enough to know to bring a team in to help me, because I guarantee you no mayor sits there doing it by themselves.
Have you got if you were to win, have you got a team on standby?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I do.
You've got a team Mayoral team on standby?
Not a mayoral team. I've got a whole lot of soundboards that I've used for this 4-year job application. I've got a lot of business friends and a lot of accomplices that I bounce everything off.
That you'll give the jobs to in the mayoral office?
If I have to, but I'll also ask them for advice, yes. Okay. But to think the mayor's going to sit there by themselves and do the whole budget...
No, they won't.
No, they won't.
Professor Collins, you're the one we know the most about, but as a leader, kind of the one we know the least about. 2 terms mostly on the majority side of the council. What did you learn from that most about how not to be mayor?
Yeah, I think what I've learned is that you've got to collaborate, and you all know that I voted against the regional fuel tax, so I haven't always been on the majority side of council because that went through, but that was a definite attempt to show people that I thought for myself, that I can be independent, and that I was independent. I think it's really important that as the councillor for Manukau, my job is to represent my constituents, and that was a regressive tax, and as a regressive tax it was going to have the highest impact on poorer communities, of which Manukau is the poorest ward in the city.
Mayoral office has a great big budget. How would you spend it?
I've got a transition team already in place, ready to go, and I think it's really important that we're prepared so that on October the 8th, when we walk into that door and take over that office, that we've got a team ready to go. I've already talked about how I'd like to have a mayoral task force for climate change. I've talked about an active transport advisor or a champion, a commissioner for that. And I think if you look at the Koitu report and the desire for future generations commissioners, you want people like that around you. But more than anything, you want an office that's going to connect well internally at council and then look far out so that we are creating systems.
You've got a team ready to go?
Yeah, I've got a transitional team ready to go, because I think what you're going to need is have a transitional team in place for 3 to 6 months, really understand what needs to be done, because my administration is going to be a climate change administration.
Yep. Wayne, I didn't ask you that one. Have you got a mayoral office team on standby?
We've had forensic accountants ploughing through the numbers to get a real grip on it. But it's not easy to get a real grip on it. I mean...
No. People who will be in the office when you arrive.
Well, the first thing to do, as you agreed, is to set a budget. And so if you haven't started crawling all over the numbers now, and there's wallpaper all over them, over the cracks in the budget, so it's not easy to come to grips with it, because they've been... The current administration is keen to get out of it without the real full
We'll come back to the
figures
numbers.
come out.
We'll come back to the numbers. Viv Beck, like Wayne, you introduce yourself to audiences around town with your private sector, public sector, senior roles that you've had. But this now is, this is the heat of politics. And arguably the biggest test is one that you're facing already, which is questions about the team that you've got and the apparent rift between people who've been in your team, the advertising agency that left with, they say, bills unpaid. Should Aucklanders look at that and think, can this person run the city?
I don't think they should look at that and think that, no, and I will be making a statement very soon to address the issues that have been asserted in recent days.
You can tell us now.
No, I can't. I'm not ready to, but I will be saying that the assertions made are not correct.
But people have left the team, an advisor who came in after that has left the team. Is leadership not about holding a team together?
It absolutely is, and my track record stands for itself. I mean, I've led public, private and not-for-profit organisations throughout my entire career, and you can find any number of people who've worked for me and would attest to the leadership I bring. I've chaired public sector boards, advising councils with very different people, very different political persuasions, public, private sector, and those have all been led positively. Yes, we've had some challenges, but I think they are manageable challenges, and I've still got some very solid people around me.
And the heat of politics is different to some of what you've had in the past, but you're up to that.
I think I'm weathering a storm pretty well, actually. Yes. Okay.
Here's a test for you. It's press the buzzer, put your hand up if you know the answer. It's called Spot the Candidate. It's a general knowledge question. The first to call out the answer wins. I'm going to read you some policy positions from a past mayoral candidate, and you have to tell me who it is. Okay, here we go. Do more with less, 6% cost cutting department by department, and a case-by-case assessment of our outsourcing, and noting that trust and confidence in council has fallen to a very low level.
Beep.
Who?
Oh,
all
that
of
was
us.
my buzzer.
Efeso Collins.
John Polino.
No, actually it's Phil Goff. Phil Goff in 2016. And the point of that is everyone goes into a mayoral contest promising many of the same things. The place is a disaster, the fat has to be cut, it needs to be more efficient, and it's easy from the outside to paint the council as a basket case needing your rigorous leadership. So given that Phil Goff talked about more for less, and it's probably more for more, or more for a bit more, or more for a lot more, how do each of you think that you can deliver the sorts of things that Phil Goff talked about before he became mayor and arguably has or hasn't delivered? We'll start with you, Viv.
Okay, well, I've had 7 years on the periphery of council now, so I'm not in it, but I'm working with it. So I've got a pretty fair idea of how it works. And so I know the things that are working and the things that aren't working. So that's a good starting point. I've talked to thousands of people over the last few months, understanding what the issues are, and I've determined, and I'm working on policies that I believe will address those issues. So I actually feel quite confident, because there's such a consistency of the issues that different groups are facing. I actually feel quite confident with really constructive leadership that is focused on results, we can make a difference.
Wayne Brown, Phil
Most
Goff, did he manage to
politicians-
do more for less?
Yeah, we've had less for more the last 6 years.
Yeah.
Most politicians promise something or other and then get in there and start keeping the job straight away. I don't care about keeping the job. You know, I want to get on and do the job. And I know that to do a major change, you have to do things fairly early in the piece that kind of worry people and frighten them a little bit. But you have to have the nerve to carry on through that and not worry about the consequences of whether or not that gets you elected in the
So
future.
you talked about giving them a fright on day one.
Well, I think you do. If you're going to have a change, it has to start off at the very start.
It's going to hurt relationships, though, isn't it? Walking in the door and saying heads are to be banged.
Well, I think when Goff reduced costs recently, he went to the chief executive and they immediately get rid of all the people at the bottom, which removes services. The people at the bottom have nothing to worry about. There's not enough people working on the streets, cleaning the streets, mending pipes, filling potholes. They've got nothing to worry about. But the people writing expensive articles and reports about it do have something to worry about. So that's the level at which and there might be some upset people in there, but that's as it may. I'm not here for those people. I'm here for the ratepayers.
I'm not sure that we've got the evidence to say they got rid of a whole lot of people at the bottom and not in the middle, but we'd never get to
Well,
the
they did
bottom of
like
that in 25 minutes.
1,000 people was the claim in the paper today, and they're at the bottom.
Professor Collins.
$900 million we lost in revenue during COVID. We have saved in this term almost $450 million. I'm a little bit tired of some of this rhetoric that says we're either broke or we're bleeding money. Yeah, there's room for us to do better. We have a value for money committee, and that's important. We've got to be laser focused on ensuring that the ratepayer gets a good deal for the money that they're contributing for the city that they want.
So you know
I'm not
arguably better than the others what's going on in there. Can you do what you're talking about with the finances that you look at?
Absolutely.
Fair, free public transport.
Yep, and all of that is possible because if you look at the equity analysis on rates, you don't want to go over 5%, which is the benchmark, and 5% on the equity analysis, not a set of rates. And at the moment, most people on average throughout their incomes in Auckland are paying anywhere between 2.2 and 3.6% of their income towards rates. So we can do, and my fares free public transport policy is about how we take money, reprioritise money. We've got $700 million available to us. We're talking about $236 million when it comes to fare free.
You've got $700 million
There is
available
$700 million
to you?
within the budget of ATAT, and that's around technology and good experience. So those monies are available. And
So that's
how we
knocking off
reprioritise.
projects and taking the money.
Yeah, it's reprioritising. One of those budgets talks about how you can get a great customer experience, and I'd say to you that the best customer experience is being able to get on the bus for free.
Craig Lord, you've talked about department by department audits. What happens if you get in there and you find the council's already done that? Which I think they have.
We do it better.
Again.
Yeah, we do.
With
You see,
consultants.
Todd, look, when you talk about people like, say, Goff, you gave the example of just speaking in narratives and not achieving anything. What I've done over the last 4 years in this job application is released ideas and policies that are sellable to the public, the general population, and they like it. And that means I'll be able to sell it to the councillors, and hopefully they'll like it. And then we can work through the executive and get these things.
So what do you think it's going to cost to audit department by department using external auditors? I'm not saying it's not a bad idea, but what's it going to cost?
I don't know yet. We have to look at each individual department and go through it one by one. It's not a magic wand where you just go, it's going to work like that, Todd. This is not how it works.
And so the value for money exercise that the council's been through for the past 5 years?
It has to be done better and properly.
Okay, do it again.
Independent commissioner councillors to work it out. Yes, an audit. And also having policies that actually have a structural way to save money are way more important than just narratives. And I've got those. You know I've got them.
But so you don't believe that that work's been going on since the day the council was formed 12 years ago?
No, I don't.
No? Very good. Okay. Now we have a section looking more to the future, and Becoming Mayor is all about the future, less about the past. AUT has 28,000 students all working on their futures. And on their behalf, we welcome to the microphone from the floor the Students' Association President, Sarah Youssef, Vice President Zina Abu Ali, and Macaulay Cunningham. They've got a couple of questions for you guys. And Sarah, could you pose the first question to the candidates?
My first question, as a mayor, how will you make sure our voice as young leaders are presented and heard in decisions about Auckland and its future?
Let's start with Craig. Quick answers.
Let's utilise the panel system better. That's how we get feedback. Local boards and the panels. Because the Mayor can't sit in the ivory tower and hear from everybody. We've got to use the progressive chain of information coming up.
Professor.
In the last term of council, I was the councillor liaison for the youth advisory panel. We had citizens' juries, and that's a great way to get people's input, but I've also released a youth rangatahi policy, and it looks at how we can widen the impact of the youth governing board. So it's important that young people have a seat at the table and they can determine some of the policies that we're thinking about, not just give us feedback on them.
Wayne, how are you going to hear the voice of the young?
Well, my son graduated from here and he gives it to me pretty regularly, so I can't
That's one voice.
I'm a great believer in asking bodies to appoint a single person to represent that large group. You can't speak to every person in various sectors, and there are lots of useful sectors. So if there's I'd encourage you to find a voice for AUT and encourage you to join up with a voice for the Auckland Council.
I think they're talking about a voice for young people in general, Wayne.
I thought you meant the students.
We are the voice.
You are.
We are the young
They're already
voice.
the voice for AUT.
Well,
how are you
that's
going to
good.
hear the voice for Auckland?
You've
young
got the
people?
president here who's representing more than 28,000 students.
Well, that's a very good representative. So that's who I'd speak to.
What about the rest of Auckland's young?
In South Auckland, our Chinese Auckland community and our Indian Auckland community and our Pacific Auckland community have their own spokespersons. And speaking to them is a useful thing. I speak to the sports representatives of our major sports and know them as well.
Okay. Vivek?
I'm actually concerned about different communities that are telling me at the moment they don't feel that they're being heard. I actually thought the panels were working okay, but I'm hearing from some that they're actually not. I'm quite interested in this work that Sir Peter Gluckman has been doing around how do we do a better job of hearing from different community groups so that can inform decision making, because I think some of the disconnects that people are talking to me about are because they don't feel that their feedback is being heard in a way that actually leads to decisions that they meet their needs. So I'm not sure if you're in that category, but I am finding a number of groups don't feel they're being heard well, so I think there is perhaps some work to be done.
What do you think about what you're hearing, Sarah? That's very diplomatic of you.
I think it would be nicer to get an answer where there's actually actions, because as a young leader, people keep saying, oh, these are the things they're going to do, they're actually going to hear our voice, they're going to represent our voice, but are we actually being
I can
heard
answer that.
to the
No,
point
we've got to-
of...
I can answer.
We've got
Yeah.
another question coming.
To the
Oh,
point
can I answer?
of actually making it an action and a decision?
Okay.
Not really.
But I
Okay.
can answer.
No, we've got another question. So, Zena, if you'd like to put the second question to the panel.
Yeah, kia ora. So as a follow-up question, what do you believe are the biggest issues for youth at the moment, and what do you plan to do to address them?
Starting with you, Viv.
Yeah, so what I had learnt from the information I had from students was that it was about safety, accessibility, affordable housing, those key issues, which actually my policies are designed to address. So I had those are some of the issues that I recall reading from the student panel that I'd read.
Wayne?
I like to sort of bridge the age gap a bit there. I really like to come in and speak to young business audiences, and I like to suggest that other older groups come along and mentor as well. And you don't just speak to them, you receive information. It's a two-way process. Share some of the experience with some of the worries which you have. We've all been students, and the difficulties of managing your finances and getting heard is a perennial problem. It's been going on ever since university started.
Professor?
Climate change and the desire for young people to make sure we're resilient, we mitigate and we adapt. What I'm also seeing very clearly is that young people, in particular those from the Rainbow community, Māori and Pacific communities, are challenged with housing, ensuring that they've got fares-free public transport so they can get to university or to polytechs and then train, and then looking at what we're doing at council already through the Southern Initiative and the Western Initiative, which is ensuring they've got transition points. So for those who don't go on to university, making sure we've got apprenticeship and internship opportunities with youth badged employees.
Craig?
I can only assume, because my 2 children, both out there in the workforce now, and they tell me it's all about their cost of living, how they're surviving. So I can only assume that would be a similar problem for you and the students. But until I'm in there, and until I get to sit with you and the panels, I'm not going to guess what your problems are. You have to tell me.
Craig, just picking up on that, so
Yeah.
what do your grown-up young people tell you about climate change?
They don't say a lot about it, to be honest. They generally don't. For them, it's all about how are we going to fill up the car, how are we going to pay the rent, how are we going to buy the clothes. You know, they're 24 and 20, and they're in the workforce, but they're struggling, even though they've got jobs, and that's what I get from them, the feedback.
Zena, what do you reckon?
I really didn't get what you plan to do to address them. I heard, I guess, some of you touched on some of the issues.
As I said, I don't know what they are. You've got to tell me what they are.
But as mayor, do you plan to...
Yes, that's what the panels are for, as I said.
Yes, but...
Yes, communicate.
Yes, so you do have to reach out. So how are you planning to reach out and to involve our voices?
With the panels, as
Okay.
I've said. I can't say it in 5 more times.
Very good. Zena, Sarah, Macaulay, thank you very much for putting questions to our panel. If we can just pick up something there. Wayne, you've been quite open about in your campaign, you are targeting the 50-plus property owners because they are the ones that vote. What kind of a message does that send to young people?
We're not exclusively doing that, but
No.
but it sends a message to young people, especially those ones that are going to business, is know your market. The central government don't risk their incomes on a postal ballot, but we have to. Young people have, a lot of them under 25, have never posted a letter. And so we looked at what is the
So you're saying
previous.
that's all to one side? In
No,
terms
that's
of,
not all to one side. I mean, our generation have entered into the digital world, and that's how we're connecting with them as well. But we're not ignoring them, but you would be fools to ignore the vote-rich areas, vote-rich age groups, shall I say. But the messages resonate with all of them. If you can get the young people to listen to you, that's terrific. But you can walk down the street and ask the young people about what's coming up for an election, and they really don't know.
Very good.
I wish
Viv?
they were more interested, I really do.
Yep. Viv, it's just one curious thing. You talk about a balanced transport policy, which seems to be code for, keeping the cars and the motoring side of things going. Is that going to appeal to young people?
No, I think
what's
that's an
balanced
unfair
about?
representation.
So what's for
I am
young
a-
people in your balanced transport policy?
Well, one, I'm proposing that we open up rapid transit to more people faster and cheaper. So I probably haven't got time to go into it, but I want to see rapid transit across the region much faster within the decade. I want to see... congestion perhaps doesn't address anything for you, but I'm very focused on achieving the emissions targets, and I propose to do that in a way that is feasible through the low emission and no emission fuels, rather than setting and there will be natural
No,
mode
let's not
shift,
go
but
into climate change. That's next.
Oh, okay, all right. Well,
All right.
I think I have addressed rapid transit. I think we need to have active transport, but active. But I do think we have to work with communities to make sure it works to meet their needs.
Okay. So you touched on climate change, which is our next topic. Auckland's committed to halve its emissions by 2030, net zero by 2050, and that means for transport a 64% cut in emissions. And yes, some of it's government policy, but changing behaviour and changing our immediate environments to encourage more use of something other than a car as council territory. In 1 minute, do each of you accept the goal, and how will you get the city there? Starting at the far end with Craig.
You know I don't.
You
I
don't
do
accept
not.
the goal.
No, I do not. I find the numbers to be fudged and not realistic. And you know my stance on this.
So you don't think you need a plan to deal with climate change,
No, not right now. We need to deal with mitigation.
which is what, seawalls?
No. Draining the culverts, cleaning the drains, clearing the rivers, which Auckland Council admitted was the problem with the Kumu flood.
3 or 4% of the
We've got to
problem.
do that.
3 or 4% of the problem.
Doesn't
in the
matter.
Kumu floods.
We've got to sort out I've seen Facebook posts today of the cleaning trucks that went into a street. They actually messaged me to tell me, and they don't do it.
Good, that's
We
your
are not
climate
looking
change-
after it.
That's your climate change
Yes, it
action.
is.
Yep, a fesso.
Yes, I accept the evidence, and I think it's important we get people out of their cars. Decongesting our roads is going to be possible when you've got fare free public transport, and that's good for people who need to be on the roads because then they can drive. So let's get people out of their cars. Let's ensure that we've got cycling infrastructure that is well connected, because that's going to encourage more people to cycle. And when you've got nice wide footpaths, people are going to walk. And the other thing that's connected to this is how we intensify, because if we're intensifying and having good housing that's near good amenity, that's close to schools, to local parks, then people aren't going to need a car. And we've got good developments happening in South Auckland and in West Auckland, where some of the developments don't have a car park, but you get the opportunity to get an e-bike or an e-car that's shared by
So
residents.
you could find the money to do fare-free public transport
Yes.
and accelerate cycling infrastructure to the point where it needs to have a 17-fold increase in cycling's share of all trips.
Yeah, look, that's the plan. That is
That's
our
the plan.
ambition.
That's the
and then it's
ambition.
working towards making it happen. I'm talking about, so the monies that I've already referred to are within the current ATAP, and that's $31 billion of investment, and we've already approved $336 million to improving cycleways.
So you could get to 64% by 2030.
I'm confident we will make every effort to get there.
Wayne.
I think if you're going to change people's behaviour, you've got to behave in that way yourself. I live in the city and walk into town mostly. We also have to take meaningful, obvious steps that people can see, do that thing straight away, and immediately shifting all the container trucks off the wharf onto trains is an obvious, easy example.
Well, easy. Where are the trains and tracks coming from?
The trains and the traffic are there now. Once a day, a train load full of containers leaves the wharf for South Auckland. They could be going every hour.
Okay, I'm not sure that's going to shift the dial. Let's
Shifts
leave
the
it.
dial significantly in the heavy truck thing and sends a message that you can do these things. The next thing to do is, if we've got a climate emergency from the government, they've also got to start behaving better. They fly everywhere.
Yeah,
They
no.
should take
We're
trains.
talking about the council. We know
Yes,
some things are government. What are you going to
yeah,
do as
but
Mayor of Auckland?
examples come from above. If they're setting rules for us, they should start setting some examples themselves. And
as a
the
mayor,
recent
what are you going to do?
Well, recent experience in Pakistan and China shows there is evidence that there's bad things happening. And so you've got to start thinking and making preparation for that as well.
So you're
As well
backing
as
the emissions reduction plan?
the emissions reduction plan runs nicely with the moves towards electric vehicles. We're still going to have roads. We're going to be more and more electric vehicles, and I'm in favour of that. But we also have to do some things to mitigate what we know are going to have sea level rises. We've got to behave and take up some of the obvious technical skills that the Dutch.
But how do you get there? You know, you also say that Auckland Transport shouldn't be about trying to change the way we live, but meeting our current needs. How does that deal with climate change?
Well, you meet our current needs better than what they're doing now. For instance, people will get on buses if you make it more attractive, and it's not so much about the price. The buses stop at every red light that cars do. In modern countries, there's a transponder on board, so when they arrive at a light, they go straight through, and people sitting in their cars will jump out because they realise the bus is now 5 kilometres ahead of them.
Okay.
So simple IT upgrades, and that starts to change.
That'll get us to 64%. Viv, are you with the 64% target?
I accept the end but not the means. So what I'm proposing to do is electrify the bus fleet by 2030 and support the move.
That's kind of happening.
Well, it's not fun. I'm proposing to fund it. I'm proposing that we support the move to electric vehicles. I'm proposing that we actually make public transport free for over 65 students and community card holders, but not free for everyone, because the international evidence is that people don't get out of cars for free public transport. It might be 1 or 2%, but actually it's really only increasing patronage of the people who are already getting public transport or walking or not travelling at all. Can I just finish? So what I want to do is is ensure the public transport network is as good as possible, as fast as possible, as cheaply as possible. So they do what they did on the Northern Busway. They do get out of cars for that busway.
All that's in the plan. So we've got 8 years to get to 2030.
Yep.
You don't accept the plan that's been worked on for 6 months. You're going to start again.
No, what I'm saying is that rather than having plans that never get achieved, I mean, how many plans do we see that don't get achieved? 1 to 17% to active mode in that time frame. I mean, I've just spent months out there doing all this. I mean, I changed my behaviour 15, 20 years ago, and I don't drive a lot. But the reality is many people out there have to. You know, I've been to the top of the region and the bottom,
Yep.
they have to drive.
Yep.
So I think we have to do, like, for example, I want to bring forward greenfield infrastructure where you put the cycleways in at the outset. I want to make
So
the
more
bus
sprawl with cycleways.
safer for children to walk and cycle to school. There are things that I think we can do, but we've just got to be practical and sensible and be realistic about how quickly we can do mode shift for people who won't have access to reasonable, fair
Right.
public
Good.
transport.
So you agree with the goal, but not the means. Let's move
No,
on.
I'm saying there needs to be a practical plan that
We need a
Aucklanders
new
will
plan
agree.
as the clock ticks. Okay, the next stage is you ask the question. This is not an original idea. I stole it from the British Conservative Party leadership debates. So each candidate can pose one question directly to one other candidate. Professor Collins.
Cool. I'd like to pose a question to Wayne Brown. And my question is, are you prepared to note all your commercial interests for public knowledge?
Absolutely. They're pretty well known already. You've only got to visit the company's office. It's not hard.
Well, it doesn't tell you what properties they are. It doesn't tell you what properties you've got around Auckland.
Well, I haven't got that many around Auckland, but it does actually. If you can't find them, then I'll have to show you how to go through the land information
You
system.
could make it easy for everyone.
Everything is available. Everything's available. I'm quite happy to do that.
Okay. If you're mayor, you'll have to do it anyway. Craig Lord,
Yeah, I'll ask Wayne a question.
popular guy,
Yeah. Why did the Northland community vote you out so convincingly in 2013?
Oh, it
farmers.
was the National Party, mate. The same people that did now, they want me back. When you fix things up, everyone gets used to being fixed up and think, gosh, wouldn't it be nice to have someone who came and kissed every baby and opened every cupboard if there was a sandwich inside. But I'm not that sort of guy. And so I
they
fixed
didn't
it
want
up,
you.
and then they thought, oh, we're going, wouldn't it be nice to have that nice old National Party tosser? And they did. So there we
Language.
So, no reason?
Okay, no, you don't get a follow-up question. Viv Beck. Give Wayne a break.
Oh, no, my question is for Wayne.
Sorry, Wayne.
So
That's
Ports of
what happens
Auckland-
when you get in front, you see.
Ports of Auckland announced a $10 million after-tax loss today. So what are you going to do when you start on day one to charge them the $400 million a year? What are you going to do when they don't pay?
Oh, they'll pay all right. There's plenty of people lining up to contribute to that. I can tell you their names.
So how,
No, they're
how
going to
will
pay
they
with what, she's asking.
How will they pay?
If you are running a business which is absolutely covered in land, the developers are lining up to come in and pay rent
So
and
what will you
cover
do?
that straight
Yeah,
away.
so this is what I want to understand. So
You won't
they
get
clearly
that in
can't-
year one.
They can't pay, so what are you going to do to get
They
that
can
money?
absolutely pay.
So tell us what
we
they'll
know
do.
that's what the value of land is.
I understand that, but
Everybody
tell us what you're
pays
gonna
to be
do.
on the land they're going to be. They managed to find $600 million to lose on an automation
No,
project.
please answer the question.
63, the 600's your figure.
No, 63 was just for the software. They haven't owned up to the hardware. That's what I'm saying about.
Yeah, but the 600 is your figure, your estimation.
That's my figure. It's the Maritime Union's figure. It's the Shipping Council's figure.
Okay.
There is a view to think that that's a bit low, to be honest.
I don't think we've quite got to the bottom of how that's going to happen, but Wayne, I'm sorry, but it's your turn now. You've got to keep going.
Okay, Ifiso, as a sitting councillor and a close Labor Party colleague of the Mayor, are you able to tell us the actual costs and finish time of the City Rail link? Because nobody else wants to tell us, and ratepayers are up for the cost overruns.
No, I can't tell you because we have a mediation process that is in place at the moment. And once that mediation process has run its course and we can provide those figures through the mediation process, then everyone will be finding out because it will come back to the governing body table and we will make that information public. But until then, we've got a mediation process, like commenting on a court case when there's a court case going through the courts.
And
It's not possible.
I would like to. I would like to.
Hospital every day.
Wayne, I would like to throw a fact in here because right through COVID, we in the media have constantly gone back to CRL and said, what's the impact, what's the delay, what's going to happen to the costs? And for the past 2 years, they have been consistently saying at the end of 2022, that's when the review will come. Nothing to do with dodging the election, that is when they will review it.
That's not how you run a big project. We
No, but
knew
that's
the
how they've
cost of
always
the
said it, so
hospital
there's nothing
every
sinister
day.
going on.
So what, you expect us to jump in before the mediator comes back?
I'd have
and make up
expected you
some
to know
figures.
exactly what the costs are all the way through.
We do know what the
Knowing-
costs are at the moment. We settled on figures when we went into the contracting process, but as Todd's already pointed out, we've got a mediator who's working with council, CRL Limited, alongside Link Alliance, and when those results, when that mediation process is complete, we'll all know.
We'll know by Christmas. All right, so we're at the closing stage now, and this is the last word stage. You don't have to deliver a well-packaged wrap of who you are. You can use your 1 minute to say anything that you want to say about yourself or what's happened this evening. Start at the far end with Craig.
Okay. It would be nice, Wayne, if you could answer questions for once. But I want to be a mayor for the people. Genuinely, straight up. That's what I want to do. I want to be the mayor for everyone. I don't want to be the CEO. That job's already taken. And that is not what we are applying for. The mayor is the representative of the people. That's all I want to do. Represent the people and the city. Thank you.
Viv.
So we have, based on the feedback I've had over the last few months, we have developed really tangible policies around transport, congestions, emissions, crime, housing, infrastructure, and how we will see improvements in Auckland Council. I believe those changes are possible, but to make them happen, we do need constructive leadership that can listen to the different groups, who can work very collaboratively with the elected representatives on council, because the mayor is only one vote out of 21, who can drive high performance through the council and the council-controlled organisations, and who can work constructively with the government of the day, whichever one it is. I have those skills. I'm absolutely up for the challenge, and ultimately you are the champion for all of Auckland as a mayor.
Wayne Brown, your minute.
Oh, thanks for stuff, AUT and the audience for a great debate. There's a lot of work to be done to fix Auckland and get control of the finances, but it's a great city and it just needs good leadership and getting things done. So with your help, we can fix Auckland together. Thank you.
Professor.
I'm proud of this city. I'm proud to be someone who was born in Tāmaki Makaurau, Auckland, a city that's invested in my life and my family's life, provided work for my family so that we could go from mum being a cleaner and dad being a taxi driver to me getting a university education. This is what Tāmaki Makaurau is all about. It's about ensuring that people lift their eyes, that there's a sense of hope in our city. And that's the style of leadership that I will bring. I'm inclusive. I care about this city. I care about our finances. I care about what we're doing for people so that they feel connected, so they feel like they have a sense of belonging. And that is what people will get. The people of Tāmaki Makaurau will get that as their leadership style by voting for me.
Thank you. Well, I have to say, with a minute or so in hand, I'm extremely relieved that nobody said the council was broke or that it was losing $3 million a day, because we would have needed an awful lot of time to work our way through whether that was fact or fiction. Craig Lord, Professor Collins, Wayne Brown and Viv Beck, the four candidates, thank you very much for joining us, the audience here at AUT and those online, and a special thanks, of course, to AUT for hosting Stuff, and for everyone in the audience and those on stages. It's up to you now. The voting papers go out on September the 16th. The last day to vote is October the 8th, and that was the Stuff AUT 2022 mayoral debate. Thank you.
Kia ora.
Thanks, John.
Thank you very much, Tom.